Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you to Miranda and Elisa for inviting me to speak and for all the work that you guys do with the ALD Alliance. Today I'm going to talk through our journey with ALD and how the newborn screen changed our lives. So my name is Kayla Rennie and I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm joined today by my partner, Donovan. We have been together for 6 years, and we are both first-time parents to our beautiful boy, Samson, who just turned 8 months old. And I just want to quickly apologize in advance if I get choked up while I'm speaking today. I only practiced in front of Samson, and he doesn't give great feedback. And unfortunately, he couldn't be here today with us, but I do believe he's watching via Zoom, so hi, Samson, I miss you. On July 23rd, 2024, we welcomed Samson into the world. He was 6 pounds and 12 ounces, and he was more perfect than I ever could have imagined. After having a healthy, uncomplicated pregnancy and a surprisingly short labor and delivery, I thought that everything was just as it should be, but our real journey was just beginning. After a short hospital stay, Samson had passed all of his newborn tests, and we got the go-ahead for discharge. I eagerly packed up all of our bags, and I dreamed about the fresh newborn snuggles in our home. After packing up the car and finally figuring out the new car seat, we changed Samson's diaper one last time before heading home. We discovered then that Samson had a diaper full of blood. Being a first-time mom, I knew that this probably wasn't normal, but seeing the shocked look on the nurse's face really solidified that for me. Something was wrong. This is completely unrelated to ALD, however, it's super important in our diagnosis story, so I just wanted to touch on it. The nurses assured me that this was most likely Samson's blood that he had ingested during labor and delivery. However, after hours and hours of waiting, test results confirmed that the blood was Samson's. Samson was not even 48 hours old, and he had his first ambulance ride from his birth hospital to the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh NICU. This was everything but newborn snuggles at home. Going home without my new baby was devastating, and it did not feel real. Adding to my postpartum feelings, and my hormonal shifts, I think I sobbed the entire few days that he spent in the NICU, but luckily it was only a few days. With time and close monitoring, Samson's symptoms disappeared, and we got the go-ahead for discharge. Although there were no real answers for Samson's symptoms, I was so happy to finally go home. While I was completing discharge paperwork, I received a phone call. "Hello, is this the parent of Samson Kinney?" they asked me. I thought to myself, whoa, that sounds so weird. I better get used to hearing that. I've only been a mom for 6 days. "Yep, this is his mom," I replied. The woman on the phone then briefly told me that Samson's newborn screen came back inconclusive and that I needed to bring him back into the lab today so that they could re-prick his heel. "Don't worry," she assured me. "This happens all the time. Usually the first time they just didn't get enough blood and it comes back inconclusive. It is really important though that you bring him back today. Actually, the sooner the better. Can you be here within the hour?" I hung up the phone feeling so frustrated. Another delay in going home with my baby. But thankfully, a nurse overheard me explaining this situation to Donovan, and she offered to take care of the blood work before discharge. After a quick heel prick and a lot of Samson screams, we were finally headed home. Gathering up all of our discharge paperwork, the nurse handed me 2 additional papers. One was Samson's newborn screen results, and the other was a printout titled Adrenal Leukodystrophy. I took a closer look. The newborn screen results stated inconclusive for X-linked adrenal leukodystrophy. I quickly glanced at the other diagrams on the printout. "Do not Google it," the nurse told me. She, like the other woman on the phone, reassured me that retests happen all the time, and I think for once in my life I believed them. Given the unexplained circumstances that led Samson into the NICU, I had myself convinced that these inconclusive results were a mistake. Although I believed them, I of course had to do a quick Google search myself. I reread the same keywords as I skimmed the search results. Rare, no cure, brain, and affecting males. I was so exhausted from the stressful week, my brain could not process what I was reading. I was also so excited to finally be home with Samson that I didn't want to understand what I was reading. I tucked those 2 additional papers into a folder and I did not look at them again. I was finally headed home toward newborn snuggles on my couch. Those next 2 weeks felt like limbo. No news was good news, I constantly reminded myself. We soaked in the newborn bliss, but the thought of those inconclusive results never left my mind. It was August 12th that I got that life-changing phone call. Earlier in the day, I had received a notification through the health portal that Samson's repeat newborn screen results came back. The results looked identical to the first, inconclusive for X-linked adrenoleukodystrophy. Immediately, there was a pit in my stomach. About an hour later, I received a phone call from a genetics counselor at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. We didn't discuss much on the phone other than when we could meet with her to discuss Samson's results. She asked if we were available the next day. Of course we were, I thought to myself. Samson is only 3 weeks old, and I'm on maternity leave. Donovan overheard me teary-eyed on the phone, and although it wasn't unusual for me to be crying lately, he knew that this phone call was different, that something had changed, and that the weight of this news was heavier than anything that we'd faced before. I remember feeling incredibly bothered by the urgency of this appointment. However, I'm so grateful that we lived close to a hospital and that I wasn't going to have the anxiety of these test results looming over me for longer than one night. Needless to say, it was a sleepless night, and I was up Googling everything that I could about ALD. The day that we met with our genetics counselor was a blur. I remember spending a couple of hours in a small room with Donovan, Samson, and my mom, Samson's Grammy, learning everything about ALD while we each went through a box of tissues. Samson also had his first blood draw this day, a process that I feel like I'll never get used to, as I'm pretty squeamish myself. Our genetics counselor was incredibly thorough in explaining ALD and how it might affect Samson in the future, including possible treatment options and what his care plan would look like moving forward. She even presented it to us on this printed out slideshow, which helped us tremendously in understanding. She also referred us to the Center for Neurogenomics and Endocrinology, where Samson would be established with doctors for long-term care. We also learned this day that Samson had a mutation of a deletion and that it was classified as likely pathogenic. We also learned about the patterns of generic inheritance, which is when I learned that I had most likely passed this to my son. How could this be possible? The guilt hit me immediately, and I felt at fault for unknowingly dooming my son with this gene mutation. I was in absolute denial. Our genetics counselor then worked with us to map out our family trees, trying to predict where this mutated gene came from. At the time, we suspected it had come from my mom's side of the family. We traced through the family tree and identified clues and a few health issues that pointed us in this direction. Because of this, my mother and I were both completed genetic testing to confirm this mutation. We spent an anxious 4 weeks awaiting those results. We drove ourselves crazy thinking about the genetic possibilities and who else in our family might be affected by ALD. When we finally got the results, we were really caught off guard. Our genetics counselor confirmed that I did carry the genetic mutation, however, my mother did not. Okay, so I knew I had the gene, and now I'm so glad that my mom does not, but where does this mutation come from? Again, I was in absolute denial. So the next step was for my father to be tested. Our genetics counselor suggested that he have his very long-chain fatty acid levels tested, as this test was more easily accessible compared to the genetic testing for the ABCD1 gene. Considering the possibility that my father might have ALD set my family and I into another downward spiral. Within a week, my dad's results came back. Luckily, his levels were normal. So when I received confirmation that it was just me and Samson who had this genetic mutation, it felt incredibly isolating, although I was very relieved for the rest of my family. Those thoughts and fears that had consumed me the past month about my family having ALD were wrong, and those fears quickly shifted towards Samson and his future. I could not shake the feeling that this wasn't real, even as the facts were being laid out in front of me. So now I understand that ALD can be detected at birth, and it can show up in one of several ways. It may be life-threatening, or it may never present at all. And there's no way to predict how, when, or if symptoms will ever appear. All of this because of a mutation on the ABCD1 gene, a gene that honestly sounded completely made up to me at the time, even though I know that it's not. It didn't feel real. It still doesn't feel real, especially when I'm explaining ALD to someone who's hearing about it for the first time. A few days after meeting with our genetics counselor, Samson had his first appointment with endocrinology. I picked up Grammy. She comes with us to every appointment, and we were on our way. I had very few expectations going into this appointment. I thought we were just meeting Samson's doctor and establishing care and going over what his care plan would look like moving forward. Our endocrinologist sat down with us and went straight to the matter at hand. Samson has adrenal insufficiency. Suddenly, we were having a different conversation, one about daily medications, stress dosing, and the risks of adrenal crisis. It was so disorienting, and it made everything feel so much more serious and real. Once again, I was in absolute denial. As we had just learned from our genetics counselor, we expected that Samson would most likely develop adrenal insufficiency within his life, but we certainly did not expect that he would be practically born with it and that he would begin taking a lifelong steroid at just 3 weeks old. I was so hesitant to give Samson these medications. It felt unnatural to give a newborn a pill, and it felt so wrong to question the doctors who were guiding us. Samson's levels were so off the charts, I was desperate for a second opinion. I felt blindsided by his diagnosis that it pushed me to start doing a little bit of my own research. That's when I came across Dr. Regelman and her talk from the ALD Standards of Care conference last year. She mentioned that the youngest baby reported with adrenal insufficiency was just 5 weeks old. I remember joking that Samson was breaking this record, being extra rare. I also found her surveillance guidelines for adrenal insufficiency in boys with ALD. Later, our doctor shared the same resource with us, but I found it on my own. I found that finding it on my own really strengthened my understanding early on. Looking back and knowing what I know now, I shouldn't have hesitated to give Samson these medications. But remember, I've only been a mom for 25 days now, and I was going to question everything. As we tried to process this new reality, I found myself desperately searching for connection and guidance. That's when I found the ALD community. I discovered the Facebook groups for ALD and adrenal insufficiency, more specifically groups on Facebook and the ALD Alliance. When Samson was first diagnosed with adrenal insufficiency, without hesitation, I created a post in an ALD Facebook group. At that moment, I was in need of reassurance that it would get easier. My post was flooded with comments of mothers sharing their similar experiences. I felt immediate comfort in realizing that I was not alone. Furthermore, the ALD Alliance offered us invaluable resources for navigating this diagnosis, and they even sent Samson a thoughtful care package. The care package came just at the right time, lifting our spirits when we needed it the most, right before his first MRI. The ALD community has embraced us with warmth and support. Every person that I've connected with has been incredibly kind, and it's always a relief to speak with someone who truly understands ALD. The following week, we had our appointment at the Center for Neurogenomics. Meeting Samson's neurologist felt both comforting and intense, considering that this would be the first of many appointments. Our doctor is a true blessing. She patiently walked us through Samson's care plan for the future and took the time to answer every question that we had. She recommended that Samson have a baseline MRI now with follow-up MRIs every 6 months. She explained that his first MRI would be non-contrast and that he would not need to be sedated. Because of his age, we had the option to bundle and feed for the MRI. I was given instructions to keep Samson awake in the hours leading up to the MRI and to feed him immediately before with the goal that he would sleep the entire time. I thought that sounded easy enough with no harm to Samson, so the MRI was scheduled for the following week. As we headed into the MRI, I was so nervous, but Samson was overtired and ready to be fed. We went through the motions, explaining how the MRI would work, changing our clothes, and feeding Samson a warm bottle. We even had time to snap a picture with his new MRI buddy. Everything was going smoothly until the MRI tech came to get us. Samson was still awake after being awake for 4 hours, but I knew that he would fall asleep any second. The technician prepared him for the MRI, taping his earplugs, tightening his swaddle, setting up all the equipment. But Samson continued to fight a nap that day. Actually, this was the longest he had been awake in his entire life. A few more hours had passed, but he finally fell asleep. It took us all day, but Samson's first MRI was complete. Today, Samson is happy and thriving. He loves to play disc golf with Dad. He sings at library rhyme time with his cousin Abby, and he's crawling faster than I can keep up with. He takes hydrocortisone and fludrocortisone daily for his adrenal insufficiency, and after 8 months, I finally have a stable routine for his care. Giving a baby a pill was quite the learning curve. He will continue to follow up with endocrinology every 3 months and have MRIs every 6 months. And while it's tough living life in these 3 and 6 month increments waiting for the next appointment, Samson continues to remind me to live joyfully in the present. This has been the hardest thing that I've ever done. I knew that I was preparing to be a parent, but I had no idea that this is what it would look like. The first time, and I'm continuing to learn every day, of course. The first time that Samson had a high fever, I gave him the incorrect stress dose, but I now know his dosing by heart, and I carry written instructions everywhere we go. I'm learning to advocate for Samson and for myself. It's not always easy, but I've learned that asking questions and advocating for what he needs is my job. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in this journey is to take life one day at a time, sometimes even 1 hour at a time. It's so easy to get lost in the uncertainty of ALD and to feel overwhelmed by what might be coming, but I remind myself every day to focus on what's right in front of me, and that is my happy Samson boy. We know that this is a lifelong journey, but we are not walking it alone. They say that it takes a village, and ours has carried us through moments that we never imagined. I'm so thankful for each and every person standing with us. You make this path feel less heavy and remind us every day that there is hope. Some days are still hard, there is still grief, and the fear of the unknown is always there. But alongside all of that is gratitude. I'm so thankful for the newborn screening, for the ALD community, and for the families who have walked this path before us. Their experiences, wisdom, and most importantly, their hope have helped light the way. I'm deeply grateful for the doctors and researchers who are working toward a brighter future for families affected by ALD. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our story. Preparing for this has been the first time that I've truly processed everything that we've been through, and being here has allowed me to become a better advocate, caregiver, and a mother for Samson. I'm deeply grateful for the ALD community. And I'm going to leave you all with this poem that I came across in our early diagnosis days. These words that I found on Pinterest kept me grounded, and I find myself continuing to change the months to reflect present time when I need that reminder. So I wanted to share it for those who might need that reminder today. Thank you so much for listening.